Sophia Martinez had always been exceptionally good at becoming invisible, a skill that had served her well throughout her career as an undercover federal agent specializing in organized crime investigations. For the past 8 months, she had been living as Elena Rossi, a quiet bookkeeper working for Castellano Enterprises, one of the most sophisticated money laundering operations on the East Coast. Her mission was simple in theory but incredibly complex in execution: gather enough evidence to bring down Vincent Castellano and his entire criminal organization. What Sophia hadn't anticipated when she accepted this assignment was that Vincent Castellano would turn out to be nothing like the stereotypical mafia boss she had been trained to investigate. Instead of the crude, violent criminal she had expected, Vincent was intelligent, cultured, and possessed a magnetic charisma that made him genuinely compelling to be around. More problematically, he was also devastatingly handsome and had been treating his supposed bookkeeper with a level of respect and consideration that was making Sophia's professional objectivity increasingly difficult to maintain. "Elena," Vincent had said during one of their regular meetings about the company's financial reports, "I've been impressed with your attention to detail and your discretion in handling sensitive information. You understand the importance of loyalty and confidentiality in our business." Sophia had nodded appropriately while internally cringing at Vincent's praise for qualities that were helping her betray him more effectively. "Thank you, Mr. Castellano. I believe that professional integrity is essential regardless of the specific nature of one's work." Vincent had smiled at her response, his dark eyes conveying appreciation that seemed both professional and personal. "Please, call me Vincent. I think we've worked together long enough to dispense with excessive formality." These interactions were becoming increasingly problematic for Sophia because Vincent's apparent genuine regard for her fake identity was creating emotional complications that she had never experienced during previous undercover assignments. She was supposed to maintain professional distance while gathering intelligence, but Vincent's unexpected decency and obvious intelligence were making him feel more like a person she genuinely respected than a criminal she was investigating. The Castellano organization was indeed involved in money laundering, tax evasion, and various other financial crimes that fell within federal jurisdiction. But Sophia's investigation had also revealed that Vincent operated his businesses with significantly less violence and more ethical consideration than most criminal enterprises. He provided excellent employee benefits, refused to engage in drug trafficking or human trafficking, and seemed to maintain genuine loyalty from his associates through fair treatment rather than intimidation. "Vincent runs a different kind of operation than most people in his position," Tony Ricci, one of Vincent's lieutenants, had told Sophia during a casual conversation while she was reviewing financial records. "He believes that you can build power through respect and competence rather than fear and brutality." Sophia had found this assessment both intriguing and troubling, as it complicated her understanding of Vincent as a straightforward criminal target and introduced moral ambiguities that made her job more personally challenging. Her cover identity as Elena Rossi was nearly perfect, constructed through months of careful preparation that included fabricated employment history, educational records, and personal references that would withstand extensive investigation. Sophia had even developed Elena's personality traits, preferences, and background story so thoroughly that she sometimes felt like she was actually becoming this fictional person rather than simply pretending to be her. Elena was supposed to be the daughter of Italian immigrants who had instilled strong values about family, hard work, and discretion. She was single, dedicated to her career, and possessed the kind of quiet competence that made her valuable to an organization that needed trustworthy financial management. Most importantly, Elena had no connections to law enforcement, and no apparent interest in anything beyond doing her job well and earning a steady income. The challenge was that Vincent seemed to be developing personal interest in Elena that went beyond their professional relationship, creating situations where Sophia had to navigate romantic attention while maintaining her cover and gathering intelligence. "Elena," Vincent had said the previous week, approaching her desk with 2 cups of coffee and settling into the chair across from her with the kind of casual intimacy that suggested growing personal comfort. "I've been thinking that you work too hard and don't take enough time for yourself outside the office." Sophia had accepted the coffee gratefully while trying to interpret Vincent's comment and determine how Elena should respond to what might be romantic interest from her supposed employer. "I enjoy my work," Sophia had replied carefully, "and I appreciate having responsibilities that require my full attention and commitment." Vincent had studied her face with the kind of intense focus that made Sophia wonder whether he suspected something about her identity or was simply trying to understand her personality better. "That's admirable," Vincent had said finally, "but everyone needs balance in their lives. Perhaps you'd be interested in joining me for dinner sometime when you're not busy with financial reports and tax documents." Sophia had felt her heart racing with a combination of professional opportunity and personal confusion. Having dinner with Vincent would provide excellent access to information and insights that could advance her investigation, but it would also require her to maintain her deception in a much more intimate and personal context. "That's very kind of you," Sophia had replied, buying time while she considered the implications of accepting or declining Vincent's invitation. "I'd enjoy that." Vincent's smile had been genuine and pleased rather than predatory or calculating. "Excellent. There's a small restaurant in Little Italy that I think you'd enjoy." They serve the kind of traditional Italian food that reminds me of my grandmother's cooking. As Sophia had agreed to specific plans for their dinner date, she had realized that her assignment was entering new territory that would test both her professional skills and her personal boundaries in ways that she wasn't entirely prepared to handle. The federal task force that had assigned Sophia to investigate the Castellano organization expected her to maintain her cover for at least another 6 months while gathering evidence that could support criminal charges against Vincent and his key associates. Agent Sarah Chen, Sophia's handler, had emphasized the importance of maintaining professional objectivity despite the extended undercover assignment. The longer you're embedded with a criminal organization, Agent Chen had warned during one of their clandestine meetings, the more likely you are to develop sympathetic feelings toward your targets. That's normal and expected, but you can't let it interfere with your judgment or your commitment to the investigation. Sophia had assured her handler that she understood the risks and was maintaining appropriate professional distance, but privately she was beginning to question whether her feelings about Vincent and his organization were becoming more complicated than simple professional sympathy. The evidence she had gathered so far was substantial and would likely support federal charges against Vincent and several of his associates, but Sophia was also discovering that the Castellano organization operated more ethically than many legitimate businesses she had observed. Vincent paid his employees well, provided healthcare benefits, and seemed genuinely concerned about their well-being and job security. Vincent's not like the other bosses I've worked for, Maria Santos, the office manager, had told Sophia during a lunch conversation. He remembers our birthdays, asks about our families, and makes sure we have what we need to do our jobs well. I've been here for 12 years, and I've never felt unsafe or unappreciated. These observations were creating cognitive dissonance for Sophia, who was trained to investigate criminals, but was finding herself working for someone who treated his employees better than many law-abiding employers she had encountered. As her dinner date with Vincent approached, Sophia realized that she was facing a crucial test of her ability to maintain her cover while navigating increasingly personal interactions with a man she was supposed to be investigating. She was also beginning to acknowledge that her feelings about Vincent were becoming more complex and potentially problematic than she had anticipated when she accepted this assignment. Chapter 2. The Dinner That Changed Everything. The restaurant Vincent had chosen for their dinner was exactly as he had described, a small family-owned establishment in Little Italy that served authentic Italian cuisine in an atmosphere that felt more like someone's home than a commercial dining space. Sophia arrived dressed as Elena would for a first date with her employer, professional but attractive, in a dark blue dress that was elegant without being overly formal. Vincent was waiting for her at a corner table that provided privacy for conversation while allowing him to maintain his characteristic awareness of his surroundings. He stood when Sophia approached, helping her with her chair in a gesture that seemed genuinely courteous rather than performatively gallant. "You look beautiful, Elena," Vincent said as they settled at their table, his compliment delivered with sincerity that made Sophia feel both pleased and guilty about deceiving him. "Thank you for agreeing to have dinner with me." Sophia smiled in response, channeling Elena's supposed personality while trying to ignore her own growing attraction to Vincent's obvious intelligence and consideration. "Thank you for inviting me. This place is lovely, very authentic and warm." As their meal progressed, Sophia found herself engaged in the kind of genuine conversation that she rarely experienced during undercover assignments. Vincent was an excellent conversationalist, asking thoughtful questions about Elena's background and interests while sharing his own perspectives on art, literature, and current events with a sophistication that contradicted stereotypes about organized crime figures. "I've always believed that education and cultural appreciation are essential for personal growth," Vincent said as they discussed a recent art exhibition that Elena had supposedly attended. "My grandmother insisted that I learn to appreciate beauty and complexity in all its forms, not just the practical aspects of business and survival." Sophia felt touched by Vincent's reference to his grandmother and his obvious respect for the woman who had influenced his intellectual development. "She sounds like a remarkable woman. Did she encourage your interest in legitimate business as well as cultural education?" Vincent's expression became more complex as he considered Elena's question about his family history and the path that had led him to his current position. "My grandmother wanted me to have choices," Vincent replied carefully, "but she also understood that family loyalty and business relationships sometimes create obligations that limit those choices. She taught me to conduct myself with honor regardless of the specific circumstances I found myself in." Sophia recognized that Vincent was acknowledging his criminal activities while also expressing the ethical framework that guided his behavior within that context. His honesty was both professionally useful and personally compelling, providing insights into his character that complicated her understanding of him as a straightforward criminal target. "That's a wise philosophy," Sophia replied, meaning it genuinely while also encouraging Vincent to continue sharing personal information that might be relevant to her investigation. "Honor and integrity are important regardless of one's profession or circumstances." Vincent studied Sophia's face as if he were trying to understand something about her that went beyond her words. "You have an interesting perspective on ethics and morality, Elena. Sometimes I feel like you understand things about honor and loyalty that many people miss."
Sophia felt a chill of concern that Vincent might be beginning to suspect something about her identity, but his tone seemed more appreciative than suspicious. I think everyone develops their own understanding of right and wrong based on their experiences and the values they've been taught, Sophia replied diplomatically, trying to deflect Vincent's attention from any qualities that might seem inconsistent with Elena's supposed background. As their conversation continued over wine and dessert, Sophia found herself genuinely enjoying Vincent's company in ways that had nothing to do with her professional objectives. He was intelligent, thoughtful, and possessed a dry sense of humor that made her laugh despite the artificial nature of their interaction. "Can I ask you something personal?" Vincent said as their meal was drawing to a close, his tone becoming more intimate and serious. Sophia felt her heart rate increase, wondering what Vincent wanted to know and whether his question would require her to reveal information that might compromise her cover. "Of course," Sophia replied, trying to appear calm and open while internally preparing for potential challenges to her fictional identity. Vincent leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes focused intently on Sophia's face. "I've been wondering whether you're involved with someone. You never mentioned dating or relationships, and you seem to keep your personal life very private." Sophia felt relief that Vincent's question was about Elena's romantic status rather than something more directly threatening to her cover, but she also recognized that her answer would have significant implications for their developing relationship. "I'm not involved with anyone," Sophia replied honestly, since this was true for both Elena and her real identity. "I've been focused on my career, and haven't found someone who seemed worth the investment of time and emotional energy." Vincent's smile suggested both pleasure at her availability and understanding of her cautious approach to relationships. "I can understand that perspective," Vincent said. "I've also been cautious about personal relationships, because my business circumstances make it difficult to trust people's motivations and intentions." This comment provided Sophia with an opening to ask questions about Vincent's personal life that might yield useful intelligence, while also satisfying Elena's natural curiosity about someone she was supposedly beginning to date. "Have you had serious relationships in the past?" Sophia asked, genuinely curious about Vincent's romantic history and how it might have been affected by his criminal activities. Vincent's expression became more guarded, suggesting that his personal relationships were indeed complicated by his professional circumstances. "I've had relationships," Vincent replied carefully, "but I've learned to be very selective about who I allow into my personal life. Trust is essential in my business, and it's even more important in romantic relationships." Sophia felt the irony of Vincent's emphasis on trust, given that she was deceiving him about her most fundamental identity. But she also understood that his caution was probably justified, given the dangers and complications that would come with dating a federal agent. "Trust is important," Sophia agreed, feeling guilty about her deception, while also recognizing that Vincent's approach to relationships would make her investigation more challenging if their romantic involvement continued to develop. As Vincent walked Sophia to her car after dinner, both of them seemed reluctant to end the evening, despite the late hour and the fact that they would see each other at work the following day. "I had a wonderful time tonight," Vincent said, standing close enough to Sophia that she could smell his cologne and feel the warmth of his presence. "I hope we can do this again soon." Sophia felt torn between her professional obligation to maintain Vincent's romantic interest for investigative purposes and her growing personal attraction to him that had nothing to do with her assignment. "I had a wonderful time too," Sophia replied honestly, looking up into Vincent's dark eyes and feeling the kind of romantic tension that she had never experienced during previous undercover operations. Vincent leaned down to kiss Sophia gently, a soft, brief contact that was respectful and tentative, rather than presumptuous or demanding. The kiss was exactly what Elena would have wanted from a first date, but it left Sophia feeling emotionally confused about the boundary between her professional performance and her personal responses. As Sophia drove home from their dinner, she realized that her assignment was becoming significantly more complicated than she had anticipated. Vincent was proving to be genuinely appealing as a person, not just as a source of criminal intelligence, and their romantic relationship was developing in ways that made her professional deception feel increasingly personal and problematic. For the first time since accepting the undercover assignment, Sophia began to question whether she would be able to maintain her objectivity and complete her investigation without compromising either her professional responsibilities or her growing personal feelings for the man she was supposed to be helping to prosecute. Chapter 3, Blurred Lines.
Over the following weeks, Sophia's relationship with Vincent evolved from professional courtesy to genuine romantic involvement, creating emotional complications that she had never encountered during her previous undercover assignments. Vincent proved to be an attentive and thoughtful boyfriend, sending flowers to Elena's apartment, planning surprise lunch dates, and demonstrating the kind of consistent consideration that made Sophia feel genuinely cared for rather than simply pursued. "You seem different lately," Vincent observed during one of their evening walks through Central Park, a routine that had become their favorite way to spend time together outside the office environment. "More relaxed and happy. I hope that means you're enjoying our relationship as much as I am." Sophia felt a pang of guilt at Vincent's accurate observation about her emotional state. She was indeed happier than she had been in months, but her happiness was based on a deception that would ultimately lead to Vincent's arrest and prosecution. "I am happy," Sophia replied honestly, taking Vincent's hand as they walked along the tree-lined path. "You've been wonderful to me, and I appreciate how patient and understanding you've been about taking things slowly." Vincent squeezed her hand affectionately. "I want you to feel comfortable and secure with me. Building trust takes time, especially when you're as cautious about relationships as we both are." The irony of Vincent's comment about building trust was not lost on Sophia, who was maintaining an elaborate deception while accepting his genuine emotional investment in their relationship. She was also beginning to understand that Vincent's feelings for Elena were affecting his behavior in ways that could compromise his usually careful approach to business security. "Vincent," Tony Ritchie had said during a meeting that Sophia had been asked to attend for note-taking purposes, "are you sure it's wise to have Elena present for discussions about our Chicago operations? She's been with us for less than a year, and these conversations involve sensitive information." Vincent had looked at Sophia with obvious affection and trust before responding to Tony's concerns. "Elena has proven her discretion and loyalty repeatedly. I trust her judgment and her commitment to our organization's success." Sophia had felt simultaneously pleased by Vincent's confidence in her, and alarmed by the realization that his romantic feelings were overriding his usually sound business instincts about information security. The intelligence she was gathering during these expanded meetings was exceptionally valuable for the federal investigation, providing details about interstate criminal activities that could support additional charges against Vincent and his associates. But Sophia was also becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the way Vincent's feelings for her were being used to compromise his own security. Her regular meetings with Agent Chen were becoming more difficult as Sophia struggled to maintain professional objectivity while reporting on a man she was genuinely beginning to care about. "The romantic relationship is providing excellent access to intelligence," Agent Chen observed during one of their clandestine briefings in a safe-house apartment. "Castellano's trust in your cover identity is giving us information that we couldn't obtain through any other investigative method." Sophia nodded while feeling conflicted about the praise for her professional success. Vincent is more forthcoming about business operations when he believes he's talking to someone who cares about him personally rather than just professionally. Agent Chen studied Sophia's expression carefully, clearly assessing her emotional state and potential concerns about the extended undercover assignment. "How are you handling the personal aspects of the relationship?" Agent Chen asked directly. "Are you maintaining appropriate emotional distance, or are your feelings about Castellano becoming problematic for the investigation?" Sophia hesitated before responding, recognizing that honesty about her emotional state might compromise her ability to continue the assignment while also understanding that concealing her feelings could create professional problems if they interfered with her judgment. "I'm maintaining my cover effectively," Sophia said carefully, "but I have to admit that Vincent is not what I expected when I accepted this assignment. He's more intelligent, ethical, and genuinely caring than the typical organized crime figure." Agent Chen's expression became more serious as she recognized the potential implications of Sophia's assessment of Vincent's character. "Sophia, it's important to remember that Castellano is a criminal who has chosen to build his wealth and power through illegal activities. His personal charm and apparent ethics don't negate the harm caused by his criminal enterprise." Sophia understood the validity of Agent Chen's reminder, but she was also struggling with the growing recognition that Vincent's criminal activities were significantly less harmful than many legal businesses she had observed during her career in law enforcement. "I understand that," Sophia replied, "but I'm also seeing evidence that Vincent operates his organization with more integrity and consideration for employee welfare than many legitimate companies. That doesn't excuse his criminal activities, but it does complicate my understanding of him as a straightforward criminal target." Agent Chen looked concerned about Sophia's apparent sympathy for Vincent and the potential impact on her ability to complete the investigation objectively. "Perhaps we should consider reassigning you to a different case," Agent Chen suggested. "Extended undercover work can create emotional complications that interfere with professional judgment, and it sounds like you might be reaching that point with this assignment." Sophia felt immediate resistance to the idea of abandoning her investigation of Vincent, partly because of her professional investment in the case, and partly because of her personal unwillingness to end their relationship abruptly. "I don't think that's necessary," Sophia said firmly. "I'm still gathering valuable intelligence, and my emotional complications aren't interfering with my ability to document criminal activities and collect evidence." Agent Chen agreed to allow Sophia to continue the assignment for the time being, but with increased monitoring and more frequent briefings to ensure that her personal feelings didn't compromise the investigation or her own safety. As Sophia returned to her Elena identity and continued her relationship with Vincent, she found herself increasingly conflicted about the moral implications of her deception and the eventual consequences of her investigation for someone she had grown to genuinely care about. The situation became even more complex when Vincent began sharing personal information about his family history and the circumstances that had led him to his current position in organized crime. "My father died when I was 16, Vincent told Sophia during one of their quiet evenings together in his apartment, sharing wine and conversation while jazz music played softly in the background. He left my mother and me with significant debts to people who don't accept late payments or negotiate payment plans. Sophia listened with genuine sympathy as Vincent described how family loyalty and financial desperation had drawn him into criminal activities that had gradually expanded into his current business empire. I never intended to build a criminal organization, Vincent continued, his tone suggesting genuine regret about the path his life had taken. But once you're involved in certain activities, it becomes very difficult to transition to completely legitimate business without losing everything you've built and potentially endangering people who depend on you. These revelations about Vincent's background and motivations made Sophia's investigation feel even more personally complicated, as she began to understand that his criminal activities had developed from circumstances rather than simply greed or antisocial tendencies. As her relationship with Vincent deepened and her understanding of his character became more nuanced, Sophia realized that she was facing a crisis that would force her to choose between her professional obligations and her growing personal feelings for a man whose life she was preparing to destroy through her investigation. Chapter 4. The night everything changed. 3 months into their relationship, Vincent surprised Sophia by inviting her to accompany him to his private residence outside the city for a long weekend that he described as an opportunity for them to spend uninterrupted time together, away from work pressures and urban distractions. Sophia accepted the invitation eagerly, recognizing it as both a romantic milestone and a potential source of valuable intelligence about Vincent's personal life and security arrangements. Vincent's country house turned out to be a beautifully restored colonial mansion surrounded by gardens and woods that provided complete privacy from neighbors and casual observers. The property was elegant and comfortable rather than ostentatious, reflecting Vincent's sophisticated tastes while also suggesting the kind of wealth that came from highly successful criminal enterprises. "This is beautiful," Sophia said as Vincent gave her a tour of the house and grounds, genuinely impressed by the tasteful decoration and peaceful atmosphere he had created. "It must be wonderful to have a place where you can relax completely." Vincent smiled with obvious pleasure at her appreciation of his retreat from city life. "This house represents what I'm working toward," he explained, leading her through rooms filled with art, books, and carefully chosen furniture that reflected his personality rather than simply his financial resources. "Someday I hope to spend most of my time here focusing on legitimate business interests and enjoying the kind of life that doesn't require constant vigilance and security concerns." Sophia felt touched by Vincent's vision of a different future for himself, even as she recognized that her investigation was designed to prevent him from ever achieving the peaceful retirement he apparently desired. Their first evening at the country house was romantic and intimate in ways that their city-based relationship hadn't allowed, with Vincent cooking dinner for Sophia while they talked about everything except business and criminal activities. Sophia found herself falling deeper in love with Vincent while also feeling increasingly guilty about the deception that underlay their entire relationship. "I have something I want to show you," Vincent said after dinner, leading Sophia to his study where the walls were lined with books and family photographs that provided insights into his background and personal history. Vincent showed Sophia pictures of his grandmother, the woman who had apparently been the most important influence in his life, along with photographs of his parents and younger sister who lived in Italy and had no involvement in his criminal activities. "My family doesn't know the specific details of my business operations," Vincent explained, "but they understand that I've been able to provide them with financial security and opportunities that wouldn't have been available otherwise." Sophia studied the family photographs while trying to reconcile Vincent's obvious love for his relatives with his criminal activities and the potential consequences his prosecution would have for people who depended on his success. "They're beautiful," Sophia said, referring to the photographs but also to the evidence of Vincent's capacity for genuine love and family loyalty. "It must be difficult to be separated from them geographically." Vincent nodded with obvious emotion. "Family is the most important thing in life, but my circumstances make it dangerous for me to spend too much time with them. I don't want my business problems to become their problems." As the evening progressed, Vincent and Sophia moved to the living room where they sat together by the fireplace, sharing wine and conversation that felt increasingly personal and significant. "Elena," Vincent said, using her fake name with obvious affection, "I want you to know that what we have together is the most meaningful relationship I've ever experienced. You make me want to be a better person and build a life that's worthy of someone as wonderful as you." Sophia felt tears beginning to form as she processed Vincent's declaration of love and his apparent desire to change his life for their relationship. The guilt and emotional conflict she had been managing for months suddenly felt overwhelming. "Vincent," Sophia began, trying to find words that would express her genuine feelings without revealing her deception. "You mean more to me than I ever expected when we first started spending time together." Vincent moved closer to Sophia on the sofa, taking her hands in his with the kind of gentle intensity that suggested he was about to say something important. "I love you, Elena," Vincent said simply, his dark eyes conveying sincerity and vulnerability that made Sophia's heart break for what she was going to have to do to him. I know we haven't been together very long, but I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. Sophia felt tears spilling down her cheeks as she processed Vincent's declaration of love and the magnitude of her betrayal of his trust and genuine feelings. I love you too, Sophia replied honestly, meaning every word despite the complex circumstances that made their love impossible to sustain. Vincent kissed Sophia tenderly, and their physical intimacy that night felt like both a celebration of their love and a farewell to the relationship that could never survive the revelation of Sophia's true identity and professional mission. But as they lay together afterward, holding each other in the quiet darkness of Vincent's bedroom, Sophia made a decision that would change everything about her assignment and her future. "Vincent," Sophia said quietly, her voice barely audible in the peaceful silence of the country house, "I need to tell you something important about who I really am." Vincent's body tensed slightly as he processed the implications of Sophia's words, but his arms remained around her in a gesture that suggested he was prepared to listen to whatever she needed to reveal. "What do you need to tell me?" Vincent asked, his tone careful but not panicked. Sophia took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to say would end her undercover assignment, potentially compromise the federal investigation, and change both of their lives forever. "My name isn't Elena Rossi," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was confessing. "I'm Sophia Martinez, and I'm a federal agent. I was assigned to investigate your organization by going undercover as your bookkeeper." Vincent was silent for several long moments as he processed Sophia's revelation, his breathing remaining calm but his body becoming very still as he considered the implications of her confession. "How long have you been gathering intelligence on my operations?" Vincent asked finally, his tone surprisingly controlled given the circumstances. 8 months, Sophia replied honestly, "since before we started our personal relationship. But Vincent, you have to know that my feelings for you are completely genuine, even though my identity was false." Vincent carefully moved away from Sophia and sat up in bed, running his hands through his hair as he tried to process the reality that the woman he loved was a federal agent who had been deceiving him for their entire relationship. "Why are you telling me this now?" Vincent asked, looking at Sophia with an expression that mixed hurt, confusion, and something that might have been understanding. Sophia sat up as well, meeting Vincent's gaze directly despite her emotional turmoil. "Because I love you, and I couldn't continue the deception any longer. You deserve to know the truth, even if it means losing you and compromising my investigation." Vincent stared at Sophia for several moments, clearly trying to reconcile his feelings for her with the revelation that their entire relationship had been built on her professional deception. "Do you have enough evidence to prosecute me and my associates?" Vincent asked, his question practical but not accusatory. Sophia nodded reluctantly. "Yes, I've gathered substantial evidence of money laundering, tax evasion, and interstate criminal activities that would support federal charges." Vincent was quiet for several more minutes, apparently considering his options and the implications of Sophia's confession for both of their futures. "What happens now?" Vincent asked finally, his tone suggesting genuine curiosity rather than anger or desperation. Sophia realized that she didn't know how to answer Vincent's question, because her decision to reveal her identity had fundamentally changed the trajectory of both the investigation and their relationship in ways that she hadn't fully considered before making her confession. Chapter 5. The Choice. The silence that followed Sophia's revelation stretched for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes as Vincent processed the magnitude of her deception and the implications for both of their futures. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but distant, as if he were talking to a stranger rather than the woman he had just declared his love for. "I need some time to think," Vincent said, standing up and moving to the window where he could look out at the moonlit gardens while keeping his back to Sophia. "This changes everything about our relationship and my understanding of the past 8 months." Sophia felt her heart breaking as she watched Vincent's withdrawal, recognizing that her confession had probably destroyed not only their relationship, but also Vincent's ability to trust anyone in the future. "I understand," Sophia replied, getting dressed quietly while Vincent remained at the window. "I'll drive back to the city tonight and give you space to process this." Vincent turned to face her as she prepared to leave, his expression unreadable but not hostile. "Sophia," he said, using her real name for the first time, "I need you to know that despite everything, I don't regret our relationship. You showed me what it felt like to be genuinely loved and to love someone completely. That was real, even if everything else was fabricated." Sophia felt tears streaming down her face as she processed Vincent's words and the devastating sadness in his voice. "It was real for me too, more real than anything I've ever experienced." The drive back to the city was the longest 3 hours of Sophia's life, as she replayed every moment of their relationship and tried to understand how she could have allowed herself to fall in love with someone she was supposed to be investigating. By the time she reached her apartment, Sophia had made several difficult decisions about her future and her career. The next morning, Sophia called Agent Chen and requested an immediate meeting to discuss her status on the Castellano investigation. "I need to be removed from the undercover assignment," Sophia announced when they met at the safe house. "My cover has been compromised, and I can no longer maintain objectivity about the target." Agent Chen looked alarmed by Sophia's announcement and its implications for the investigation they had been building for nearly a year. What happened? Agent Chen asked. Did Castellano discover your identity, or has something else compromised your ability to continue the operation? Sophia took a deep breath before explaining the events of the previous evening and her decision to reveal her identity to Vincent. I told him who I really am and why I was investigating his organization, Sophia said, watching Agent Chen's expression shift from concern to shock to professional alarm about the implications for their case. Sophia, you've potentially compromised an entire federal investigation and put yourself in serious danger, Agent Chen said, her tone reflecting both professional concern and personal worry for Sophia's safety. Why would you reveal your identity to a criminal target? Sophia felt exhausted and emotionally drained, but she also felt relief at finally being honest about her situation with someone who could understand the professional implications. Because I fell in love with him, Sophia admitted, and I couldn't continue deceiving someone I care about deeply, even if it meant compromising the investigation. Agent Chen was quiet for several moments as she processed the complexity of Sophia's situation and its implications for both the investigation and Sophia's career in federal law enforcement. What's Castellano's current status? Agent Chen asked. Has he fled, destroyed evidence, or taken any other actions that suggest he's preparing for prosecution? Sophia shook her head. As far as I know, he's still at his country house processing what I told him. He didn't seem panicked or desperate when I left. If anything, he seemed sad and disappointed rather than angry or defensive. Agent Chen spent the next hour debriefing Sophia about the evidence she had gathered during her undercover assignment and assessing whether they had sufficient information to proceed with prosecution despite the compromise of their primary intelligence source. We have enough evidence to support charges, Agent Chen concluded, but losing your access to ongoing intelligence will make the case more challenging to prosecute successfully. Sophia felt guilty about compromising the investigation, but she also felt certain that revealing her identity to Vincent had been the only ethical choice available to her given the depth of their relationship and her genuine feelings for him. What happens to me professionally? Sophia asked, recognizing that her decision to prioritize personal ethics over professional obligations would likely have career consequences. Agent Chen's expression became more sympathetic as she addressed Sophia's concerns about her future in federal law enforcement. You'll be reassigned to a different type of investigation that doesn't involve undercover work, Agent Chen explained. Your record on this case is actually quite strong until the final incident, and your superiors understand that extended undercover assignments can create emotional complications. Sophia felt relieved that her career wouldn't be completely destroyed by her decision to reveal her identity to Vincent, but she was also struggling with uncertainty about what would happen to Vincent and whether she would ever see him again. 2 days later, Sophia received an unexpected phone call from Vincent asking if she would be willing to meet with him to discuss their situation and its implications for both of their futures. I've spent the last 48 hours thinking about everything you told me, Vincent said when they met at a quiet restaurant far from his usual business locations. And I've made some decisions about my life and my business operations. Sophia looked at Vincent carefully, trying to gauge his emotional state and his intentions for their conversation. What kind of decisions? Sophia asked, prepared for anything from anger and recrimination to practical discussions about his legal situation. Vincent's expression was serious but not hostile as he explained the conclusions he had reached during his period of reflection. I'm going to cooperate with the federal investigation, Vincent said, his words surprising Sophia with their directness and apparent sincerity. I'll provide information about my operations and associates in exchange for reduced charges and the opportunity to transition to legitimate business activities. Sophia felt amazed by Vincent's decision and its implications for both the federal investigation and his own future. Why would you do that? Sophia asked, genuinely curious about Vincent's motivations for what amounted to a complete transformation of his